go. Welcome to the Waterloo City. Am I?
Feedback, Sharon.
Yeah, how do I get rid of that, Chris?
Hey Sharon, can you drop off your phone?
It just did.
Okay.
That got rid of it, didn't it? Okay.
Yep, that's better.
Good, thank you. Well, welcome to the Waterloo City Council Finance Committee meeting. Would our city clerk call the roll, please?
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mrs. Juon?
Here. Motion, please, for the agenda and minutes.
Motion to approve the agenda and the minutes of May 4, 2020 as proposed.
Second.
And I did email the Finance Committee with an amendment to the agenda. Mr. Bennett has requested that item number 7 be removed.
So noted.
Is that acceptable to the motion in the second?
Yes.
I'd already noted that it got removed, Sharon.
Okay, good. So we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take the travel request, please?
Madam Chair, the first travel request is Chris Ferguson, Fire Marshal, Arson Canine Recertification, Omaha, Nebraska, June 8th through the 12th of 2020, in an amount not to exceed $718.40. And the second request is Investigator Hess, Child Forensic Interviewer Course, Waterloo, Iowa, May 22nd, 2020, in an amount not to exceed $225.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Would someone take the pre-authorizations, please?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following pre-authorizations expending over $1,000. First is the airport, amount estimated shipping handling $1,366 for 2020 to 2021 Lenel software upgrade for airport door access system. Next is building inspections with the amount estimated shipping handling $3,000 for fire alarm / suppression system plans review at 600 Park Lane, Friendship Village. Next is culture and arts with the amount estimated shipping handling $5,750 for photographic documentation of art from the permanent collection, including photo shoot and post-production funded by a private restriction contribution. Next is the garage. Amount estimated shipping handling $12,024.28 plus $114.20 shipping and handling for chain, hose assembly, and clutch assembly for unit number 190805. Next is leisure services with the amount estimated shipping and handling $1,320 plus $195 shipping and handling for antibacterial force wipes and dispensers for weight room and cardio equipment cleaning. Next is the police department with the amount estimated shipping and handling $1,925 for the Laserfish software migration for police department server. Next is police department with the amount estimated shipping and handling $950 plus $319.54 shipping and handling for 7-step work ladder with 36-inch safety platform. Next is, and finally, the traffic department with the amount estimated shipping and handling $2,737.25 plus $400 shipping and handling for 11 sets of various sizes of aluminum sign blanks.
Second.
Before we call for the vote, I will let you know that I've been contacted by a council member who would like to join us in this discussion on whether at this time of the coronavirus and all of the financial concerns that come with that, if all of these requests and other requests are based on need versus want. I talked briefly to our Financial Director, Michelle Wiedner. And Michelle, do you want to address that briefly before we open it up for council discussion?
I can do that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's Michelle Wiedner. Yes, we have asked all our departments to try to reduce operating expenses where possible. I think most of the things on here, culture and arts, for example, is paid by a donation, so that kind of comes out of a different pot of money, so I don't know that that would apply. Most of the others are items that are probably needed for operations, and possibly we don't need a ladder right now for police, but I think most of these things are necessary to keep things moving. And as I said, we have asked the departments to curtail spending where possible, and hopefully they are doing that.
Thank you, Michelle. Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Yes, as long as Michelle is there talking, could she explain item number 4? It's fire alarm suppression system plans review at 600
Yep.
Park Lane, Pitt Village.
Yes. Several years ago, the Building Inspections Department decided to begin contracting out with a firm called Lund Fire Suppression to review certain types of fire suppression plans for large institutional buildings such as Friendship Village. I think it's typically for sprinklers, although I don't know if that's always the case. So we do try to budget in their original budget for the year. We do put, I believe for fiscal 20, we budgeted $7,000 for those types of reviews. And some years we don't spend that much, some years we spend more, because it just depends on the types of buildings that come in for permits, what we spend. So that is the purpose of that expense. It will be repaid in the plan review and permit fees that Friendship Village has to pay for their project. We do recover that amount, but it's still an expense that we have to spend.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to address the wants versus needs issue? Yes, Mr. Boson.
Madam Chair, and the only reason I brought this up, and I appreciate what Michelle's doing and what the department heads are doing with trying to limit their spending. And I just think that as a council, we need to take a hard look at all of the requests that come in and evaluate wants versus needs. And I think we generally do a pretty good job of that. I think that if we have contracts out, if we have stuff in our CIP that we're finished prior, or 2 years prior, I think we need to move forward with that. I just think that not knowing and not having our work sessions yet on where we're at with road use tax, local option tax, the money we're losing with the casino each month, hotel, motel, I think until we get a handle on our finances, I think we just need to be vigilant and really take a hard look each and every week to make sure that these are things that we need now, or we could hold off until we have better days.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bilson. Mayor Hart, do you want to address that? Or is Mayor Hart there?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
Well, I just wanted to say that for sure this is quite a different time that we're living in. And I don't know for sure how long this is going to last. I don't think anybody knows for sure. But it's different than if 2 years ago at this time we were talking about the same kind of phrase, wants versus needs. Different environment. This is a environment that can result in catastrophic kinds of damage to our municipal revenues, local government revenues, and I appreciate what Michelle had said about asking all departments to operate at the leanest possible, and I applaud Councilman Boson for his making sure that we not only thought about it, but it was verbally stated in a meeting like this is part of what city council responsibilities are. So thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Morrissey. I will just note that at some of the previous department head meetings that I've attended, that point has been made that any money they can save in their operating budget for this year is critical and is needed. And I think all the department heads are doing their best to comply with that. So know that that issue is on the radar and everybody is trying their best. But thank you for the comments. Any other comments? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Will somebody take the budget line items to be amended, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
before we even begin these, I just wanted you to know that I had talked to Chief Financial Officer Wiedner about each and every one of these, and I mean, we've got 10 of these, and I just had asked that each one be explained. I know that might take a while, and what it also includes the process that this is part of. So in advance of that, Madam Chair, I just wanted to make that statement so you knew that I would be requesting that, and maybe I don't need to request it anymore. We just can do that if that's okay with you, Madam Chair.
Certainly, and I should mention I talked to Mrs. Wiedner as well and asked her to do the same thing, so she is prepared to do that. So let's go ahead and have the motion and the second, and then we can open it up to Mrs. Wiedner for discussion. So who would like to take those line items?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Morrissey.
I'll take the first five if Councilperson Klein would take the last five.
Perfect.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead and take the first five, Mr. Morrissey.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the project budget amendment for the police automated traffic enforcement project to budget to pay the program expenses for the current fiscal year in the amount of $500,000 estimated by the police department. Next is approving the project budget for the fiscal year 20 coronavirus emergency supplemental funding program for federal funds in the amount of $190,086 for coronavirus response expenses estimated by the police department. Next is to approve the project budget for the CARES relief funding for federal funds received in the amount of $42,857 for ambulance services to be used to purchase equipment estimated by the fire department. Next is to approve the budget amendment required for anticipated refunding bond issues in the total amount of $8,804,000 as submitted by the finance department. And next is to approve the budget amendment required for anticipated refunding bond issues in the total amount of $3,905,000 as submitted by the finance department.
Is second.
Second.
Okay, why don't, Mrs. Wiedner, do you want to go ahead and address the first five first?
I'd be happy to do that. Michelle Wiedner, Chief Financial Officer. So amendment number 12 about the police automated traffic enforcement project. This was the project had just begun and it didn't get included in the original certified budget for fiscal 20 because it had just started slightly towards the end of fiscal 19. So we need to at least budget to pay the expenses that we pay to GATSO. So that's what we're doing. And this is in the restricted funds project. So this is not releasing any funds to be used in the general fund. It's just for that project. So that's the first one. The next one, actually the next two are grants, federal grants received by the police department and the ambulance service department. They are both part of the coronavirus emergency funding. They're both, unfortunately, choosing to spend most of it on equipment. I was hoping we would have more of that for operating than we do. And then the last two are just to budget the pay off, as we refund bonds, I have to pay off the outstanding bonds, and we get revenue for the new bonds. So that's what those last two are doing.
Thank you.
Any questions, and Mrs. Weidner, of those 5 amendments, or 5 minutes? Any questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Yes, Mrs. Klein, would you take 17 through 21, please?
Yes, number 17 is a motion to approve the budget amendment for health insurance to record stop-loss refunds revenue received and related expenses in the amount of $1,443,000 as submitted by the Finance Department. Number 18 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to use tax increment fund balance to budget for prior year rebates paid in the current year in the amount of $50,000 as submitted by the Finance Department. Number 19 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to the solid waste activity to budget for revenue and expenses related to the new recycling program in the amount of $470,000 as submitted by the Finance Department. Number 20 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to use fund balance designated for insurance claims to pay additional anticipated claims and insurance premiums in the amount of $355,714 as submitted by the city clerk. And finally, number 21 is a motion to approve the budget amendment to use local option tax fund balance for additional anticipated expenses to be paid this fiscal year in the amount of $1,500,000 as submitted by engineering.
Second.
Mrs. Weidner, would you address those, please?
Certainly. Number 17, as you may remember, we purchased what's called stop-loss insurance so that if we have any plan participants whose expenses exceed $100,000 in a year, that's reimbursed to us by insurance. So far this year, we've received that $1,443,000 in stop-loss insurance proceeds, and that means we've also spent that much. So I am trying to make sure we cover all our expenses that we'll pay by the end of June by increasing the expenses by the same amount of the revenue. Then the next one in tax increment, if businesses don't turn in their rebate information by the end of the year, we pay it in the following year, but it wasn't budgeted for this year. So we have a few people that turn theirs in late, and I paid them this year, so I want to make sure we have enough budget to pay those appropriately. And I should have said this before I talked about the first one. The purpose of these amendments are that by state code, we are not to spend more per our 9 programs than you approve, the council approves. So that's what we're doing now. We're kind of truing up what is actually happening throughout the year to what we expected to happen a year ago in March when we set the budget for this fiscal year. So that's why we're doing these things. Number 19 is the budget amendment to the solid waste activity. And if you remember, we started our new recycling program in January. So we're paying the recycling company. It does appear that we're going to, I think our new revenue will be about $470, and I think we're going to pay about that in all the startup expenses. So I'm asking to budget that revenue and expense. The next one, we just have had more liability insurance claims, and our premium expense is a little higher than we originally forecasted. So we're trying to cover those for this year. And the last one for local option tax, when we award contracts, you know, the construction schedule really depends on the weather. When we budget back in March for these, I generally budget about $8 million for construction expense every year. Because we've had a drier spring than normal, we are spending more, we'll spend more by this June, I think, than we anticipated. So I don't know what that is. We're just trying to make sure that our expenses are approved by you before we get to year end. Does that make sense? That one's harder to explain than the others.
Yeah, understand.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that.
Okay, other questions? If not, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries, and thank you, Mrs. Weidner. Finally, bills payment in the amount of $3,599,450.40, as stated in accounts payable dated May 11th, 2020, to receive, place on file, and forward to the full council.
Second.
Second.
Is there a second?
We both seconded.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Madam Clerk, could you please read the roll?
Mr. Bozen? Mr. Bozen?
Here.
Mr. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Morrissey?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mr. Feuss?
Here.
Mr. Greider?
Here.
Mrs. Juon?
Here.
All right, thank you. If you would please join me in a moment of silence, please. All right, thank you. This pledge this evening will be led by Quentin Hart. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, justice for all. All right, thank you.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented and the minutes of the May 4th, 2020 regular session as
Second.
proposed.
Second.
That motion has been made with a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, we have an agenda. First up, we have oral presentations.
Excuse me, Mayor, you have two proclamations, actually.
I do have two proclamations sitting right here in front of me. And the first is the office. Hey, whoever's driving the semi, could you please mute your phone? The first one is the City of Waterloo, Iowa proclamation for National Police Week, Peace Officers Memorial Day. Whereas the Congress of the United States of America has designated the week of May 10th through the 16th, 2020 as National Police Week, and May 13th of this year to be Peace Officers Memorial Day. And whereas the law enforcement officers are guardians of life and property, defenders of individual right to be free men and women, warriors in the war against crime, and dedicated to the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And whereas it is known that all too often, police officers are killed in the line of duty nationwide, our community joins with other cities and towns to honor all police officers everywhere. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Quentin Hart, Mayor of the City of Waterloo, do hereby proclaim the week of May 10th through the 16th, 2020, as National Police Week, and order all flags on City Hall facilities to be flown at half-staff on May 13th, 2020. And Major Leibold, are you out there? Do you want to talk a little bit about in honor of this day?
Yeah, we just want to thank the community for the support and appreciate the recognition we received during this week. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic situation, we're not going to have the memorial on Wednesday. Cedar Falls is looking to possibly reschedule that. So we face a lot of things right now that none of us expected, including law enforcement and first responders, and we appreciate the support of the community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Major. And we all want to make sure that we keep our hearts and mind towards our brave public safety officers. So thank you so much. The next one is the Migratory Bird Day. And it says, City of Waterloo proclamation. Whereas nature lovers around the world are celebrating World Migratory Bird Day on May 9th, 2020, which supports our moral responsibility to protect bird life. And whereas Waterloo, having been officially recognized as Iowa's first bird-friendly community, has taken steps and will continue to take steps to improve conditions necessary for the health and welfare of our nesting and migratory birds. And whereas Waterloo is taking measures to educate and engage people in birding and wildlife conservation. And whereas over 300 migratory and resident bird species use the various habitats in Waterloo for feeding and nesting. And whereas birds and bird-related activities have a significant economic impact. And whereas promoting abundant, sustainable bird populations and healthy habits benefits our world biodiversity and human society. Now, therefore, I, Quentin Hart, Mayor of the City of Waterloo, Iowa, do hereby proclaim May 9th, 2020 as World Migratory Bird Day. So, Paul, are you somewhere on the line?
I am. I just want to thank you and Council for this proclamation on behalf of the Prairie Rapids Audubon Society. As you stated, we're the first Iowa's bird-friendly community, and we're working to establish habitat, both for pollinator plantings and bird habitat. We have another 4-acre plan for this coming fall. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Hutting, and thank for all that you're doing for nature and wildlife as well. All right. Those are our two proclamations. We have oral presentations right now, and we have several people that have stepped up to speak. The first person I'd like to acknowledge is Mike Henning for the Paradise Estate Communication. Mr. Henning?
All right. Can you hear me now?
We can.
All right. Mike Henning, 138 Side Hill Drive, Waterloo, Iowa, coming to you tonight as the chairperson of the Orange Neighborhood Association. Our interest is really broader than just our neighborhood, but for neighborhood associations in general. I sent some stuff to your comments department. Did you guys get that, or where does that go?
Yes,
Yes, we
we
did.
got it.
Yep, that was
Yeah,
sent
we
out to
did.
council.
Yeah.
You have it?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay, looks like this.
yes.
All right, so what we're interested in 2018, March 19th of 2018, we were formed as a neighborhood association officially, recognized by the mayor and council. And what we heard the mayor essentially tell us then was that official neighborhood associations get advanced push type notifications like an email or a letter or something, more than just having to go hunt out regular posted agendas of council actions affecting their areas. Apparently we heard that wrong, because in 2019 and just last week, you took some actions related to the Paradise Estate proposal, and we did not get any type of advance notification of that, and consequently, we did not participate in those discussions. Very disappointed as a neighborhood association about that. So for neighborhood associations in general, what did we hear wrong in 2018? What do we need to do to tie into an official process to get advance notifications? Or did we hear it correctly and we're left out for some reason? That's the question.
Mayor, you're muted.
All right. So, Noel, do you want to talk about your conversations with Mr. Henning about what your department is going to do to communicate?
Sure. Noel Anderson, Community Planning and Development Director. We've had a long-standing policy of anytime we have something going to the Planning Commission, of notifying neighborhood associations of those actions. Generally, it's a rezoning. Generally, it's a subdivision of something of that nature. We do not always send out advance notification on city council actions for something that's already gone through Planning Commission. So we can definitely change that to send out 2 notifications to neighborhood associations for council actions as well. Again, this one was a technical subdivision ordinance variance, so we did not resend the notification. We can do that in the future.
All right, so I'll keep listening to Mr. Henning's questions, and then I have Mr. Morris on the line too, who will chime in. But please continue, Mr. Henning.
So what do we need to do then so that we do officially get in the loop? Do we need to do a memorandum of understanding like was done with the Walnut Ridge Neighborhood Association? Or since we were not properly notified, are those actions related to Paradise Estates null and void, and we go back to square one?
No, what's the
We were not notified. We were not notified.
We can definitely work with the Orange neighborhood if they'd like to do an MOU like we did with the Walnut neighborhood. There was a lot of different factors with that one for demolitions and things like that with the neighborhood changing. We don't quite have those same types of actions in the Orange neighborhood, but we do have new construction actions happening there. So we can definitely work with an MOU and figure out what points would be included with that. Like I said, we'll go ahead and change our policy internally for notification for city council actions as well for items that have gone through 2 recognized neighborhoods in all areas, so that we're doing that. In terms of the invalidness, I mean, there's nothing by ordinance that requires us. It is definitely a courtesy of the city to try to keep its citizenry informed. So the actions would still be valid that the city council voted on.
And I think what I'm hearing from
Why would it be valid?
The city
Mr. Mayor,
council
I'm
still
sorry to
voted on
interrupt.
them.
Did you change any plats or anything to this?
No, we did not.
Has the final plat came through yet?
No, it has not.
So where I think part of the frustration is with Mr. Henning, and I'm pretty sure maybe other people that are on this line, is the lack of communication they receive from City Hall, Planning Department, with regards to this chain. Whether or not this would have stopped it or not, folks at least wanted to be kept in the loop if it's going to be an extension. So I am understanding Mr. Henning's frustration with this conversation. And whatever you do, there needs to be inclusive, because situations like these where there's already a little bit of apprehension with the neighbors, even though nothing has changed, people can feel like we're trying to one-up them or the city's trying to do this without their knowledge. And the best way to be able to calm those problems or challenges is to communicate with them up front. So there needs to be something placed in there so that Mr. Henning and his ward representative, which reached out to me, is kept in the loop on this. I did have a conversation with Mr. Rick Morris today just about overall happenings in that area. Rick, do you want to chime in and tell us about your process for communicating with Mr. Henning and others?
Thank you, Mayor. I am meeting with Mr. Anderson on Wednesday as I relate to you, and we will then be able to make contact. I was not aware of the Orange Neighborhood Association in any of my prior dealings until we got this after the meeting from last week. So we can sure make contact with Mr. Henning we've got his email address and let him know what we have. But as the city knows, probably our next step then is to get a final plat submitted for approval on some portion of the subdivision out there. So I can't.
I would like to point out, if I could, for a moment.
Hold on, Mike. Let him finish. Okay. Please continue, Mr. Rick.
So I can't tell you as we speak today what the time frame from that will be, but it's my understanding that even without some MOU as was discussed and could be entered into, the city would notify anybody of any activity occurring that would affect those within, is it 200 feet or 200 yards of the property.
Right. All right, Mr. Henning.
If you recall, Mr. Mayor, and those that were on the council at the time, the city council had asked for an in-depth safety study of the area and several other deliverables prior to getting the final plat. Is that still in the agenda schedule, or did that blow away like Orange Neighborhood?
No.
Mr. Henning, or excuse me, Mr. Mayor Hart, Mr. Henning, that is still what would be necessary, and that would be as part of the submittal of the final plat. And had conversation with the city about that, and with Mr. Anderson briefly, but we'll go into that in more depth when I meet with him this week.
So the legalities of what needed to be submitted to the council, that has not changed. That still needs to happen, correct?
So you'll go back and revisit everything between that happened at the last meetings, make sure that's all covered?
That will come through to the city council. And Mr. Henning, if I need to call you myself this time, I will call you myself. I think one thing that we found out about this whole process is that when you have the neighbors on board, that makes for, and Rick, you're just coming into this now, but when you have the neighbors on board, that makes for a better situation with regards to actually selling the houses, attracting people, and partnering together. So that's why this one, although it didn't have a memorandum, it was understood that there would be some type of communication, and they hadn't heard in a couple years. So we're not saying that, folks aren't saying that the neighborhood association has the final vote. They just want to be brought into the process and the conversation to make this the best win. And Rick, you're coming into this kind of new in this process, but we need to figure out how we can work with one another. I have
Mr. Mayor.
You got one more, and then I got to go because you got about 4 or 5 other people that want to speak as well.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, you stated it very well. We're just concerned we want to be in the loop. If you recall, we were not opposed to the neighborhood. We just want it to be done and done correctly and done safely and with the water and all those other issues. Can the council put up the next slide that I had?
Yeah, because you've gone over about 10 minutes already. But where's that next slide at real quick? Because I know the council has received it. You got it up, Chris?
This relates directly to what Mr. Morris just talked about, and it's talked about in the paper. It was also talked about Councilman Bozen last week. First statement was from the newspaper, quoting Mr. Bozen. We've been in limbo, like the mayor just talked about, for a couple of years. And last week, Mayor, you suggested that there be some sort of update that comes from other development groups on projects, once or twice a year, what's going on, what's not happening, that type of stuff. So how do we get this sort of an update going, at least I'm interested in for Orange Neighborhood Association, like the meeting that Hope had down at the school in February 2018. We are expecting something like that in the very near future because the project team has changed significantly, and it sounds like the project itself has changed. At that time, he was talking about individual home builders. Now he's talking about developers. So, and you got all different team members. Mr. Manning is out. And who else has changed? So we'd like to.
So what I'll do, Mr. Henning, I will forward these on to Rick. So when he meets with Buzz this week, Mr. Anderson this week, he will have these comments to share as well. We have Mrs. Monique Walters. If you would please share with us, ma'am.
Can you hear me?
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I didn't really have anything, sorry, Monique Walters, 5404 Kimball Avenue. I did not really have much else to share other than what Mike shared in that prior communication of what is going to be on the agenda and the future of the development out here. So I think Mike spoke to the items that need to be addressed, and we'll hopefully see that in the future. So thank you very much. And thank you to the council.
And believe me, your ward representative let me know that too. Mrs. Eileen McPhee.
Oh, yes. This is Eileen. I'm at 204 Lichty Boulevard. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, just making sure. I really didn't have too much to say. It's kind of been a sudden occurrence, but just want to emphasize what Mike Henning said, that we need to have better communication, and that the council has pretty much agreed to that. So if we can keep the communication going, I think we will all be better neighbors to everybody. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Matt Gibbon. Mr. Matt Gibbon.
Matt is not joining us, and the other ones are not. That's one other point. We did not get notification of the Zoom call-in stuff until the late this morning, so it was too late to get those guys all on board. So
What about Mr. or Mrs. Miss Moeller, Lynn Moeller?
he's watching on TV. He didn't get time to get logged in.
Okay, and then Mr. Morris, did you have any concluding thoughts?
Well, I was able to get with the city's continued cooperation an idea as to what had gone on before I got involved, and mentioned that to the mayor and to Mr. Anderson. So I've got materials to meet with Mr. Hope Anderson this week and get some information from Alex Bauer, who's with Fair Grant, as we discussed, who would develop the format for the and the layout for the Paradise Estates development. So we're going to try and contact him when Mr. Anderson and I meet in a couple of days, so that we can see what the next step is and what area of the development would be most prudent to put together a final plat on to get the project moving.
And I want to thank you too, because you kind of got thrown into a lot of history and trying to work together. So I think, and Mr. Henning, I think the way we kind of ended the last time was how we're going to work together. And this is kind of taking it kind of hurt us on that trust portion of it about working together. So Mr. Morris, your conversation with Mr. Anderson, you just got neighbors here and council representatives that just want to make the best scenario in this situation. They know that it's an outstanding neighborhood, tremendous school, growing area, and there's a way that if we work together, this could be go from great to an incredible project. So please, Kelly, if you would send, or Noel, if you would send Mr. Henning's notes, and if there's additional contact information to Mr. Morris, so that he can have that discussion with Mr. Anderson, and that they can make sure that you will keep them engaged and involved, because you got some good cheerleaders when you're working together for a really good project.
And
Right.
just to comment on that,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Mayor,
Mr.
Mr. Morris has Mr. Henning's handouts from tonight in his inbox currently.
Okay. Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Mayor, this is not an oral comment, just a question because of the conversation, and that is, did that traffic study get done? And if it didn't get done, I'd like to know why it didn't get done.
No.
They have not finalized that yet as they move ahead toward the final plat. Obviously, they have to have it done for the final plat. But I guess that would be probably further information that would be from Rick, but we did check in with them and they had not finalized the traffic study because they had not moved ahead with the final plat to date.
Did it even
That
get
must be
started?
presented before the final plan.
Hold on.
Let's see that before because they failed.
Mr. Henning, I need to keep this straight now. It's Mr. Morrissey's floor. Say that again, Mr. Morrissey.
Did it even get started, Noel?
Yes. I know that we've reviewed some data that they had provided. Our traffic engineer, Mohammed, had looked at the information that they had provided, but wanted some more data on that, and they did not move ahead with that to date.
Does that have to be approved? I'm sorry, Mr. Morrissey.
The traffic study, by the approval process the council did last time, the traffic study has to be completed and reviewed by city staff prior to the final plat being approved.
So that comes to council first. All right. Council, other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So are we moving on? I just want to make sure. Or are we just asking about questions on this?
Well, we'll. I just wanted to see if there was more questions about this conversation.
Okay. I don't. Thank you.
All right, council. Any other? Mr. Feuss.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I'd like to announce my intent to introduce a motion to amend a previously adopted resolution. It was number 2020-303, and I'm giving prior notice.
Second. All right, Kelly, are we all right?
Say that again.
Are we okay to do that right now?
No, Mr. Feuss is just giving his intention of wanting to amend that resolution. So we don't take any action tonight because it's not on the agenda.
Okay. All right, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can I just ask what motion that was? What was the?
Yep, that was Councilwoman. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, please.
Okay, Councilwoman Klein's. I just, after the discussion last week, and then when it came time to maybe make an amendment, the train was passing through, and then all of a sudden the vote was taking place. So I didn't want to interrupt, we couldn't interrupt the vote that was going on at the time. So after it passed, now I would like to, there was some discussion on having the words permits and making it, the moratorium and everything. And I can, and Councilwoman Juon, I will send you and the rest of the council the language that I'm proposing as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, is there anyone else that would like to comment? Oral presentations?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Bozen?
Thank you, sir. If Mr. Bennett is on, I had a question for him. And during the budget process, we were informed that he was short 2 mechanics. And I'd like to know where we're at with that process, if he's got those mechanics hired, because he's going to lose 2 mechanics this summer, and I don't think we can afford to be short 4 mechanics. I think we need to move ahead with the process if we haven't, but I don't know where we're at.
Randy, are you on right now?
Following that script was pretty simple. Okay, so I hit the off button and
Rick. All right, Randy, are you on right now?
Yeah, Randy Bennett, Public Works Division Manager. So where we're at in the process right now is we're getting ready to do oral interviews, but unfortunately with the COVID and the lockdown, of our facilities, we haven't been able to conduct those yet. So that's kind of where we're at in the process. So once it kind of opens back up, we can finish the interview process to move forward with the certified list portion.
All right, so you're moving forward.
Yeah, right now it's just, with things shut, it's not able to do the oral portion.
Can I ask, Mr. Mayor, what the holdup is? I mean, I understand we need to maintain social distancing and that, and they've got a huge conference room over at Public Works, and if there's the ability to maintain social distancing would be there. All I'm just trying to look at for ways and means to expedite this process so that we're not 3 months down the road here and don't have these people on board with interviews, with physicals, and then all of a sudden we lose 2 more mechanics and we don't even have people to train them and to bring them up to speed.
So Randy, right now you're doing verbal interviews. I don't know, have we brought anybody from the outside? Because we'd have to check temperatures and do screening. But what process are you utilizing to hire someone?
So yeah, that's where we're at the point right now, is doing the oral interview portion to try to come up with our certified list. So that,
are you looking at resumes? You're looking at...
we've already done that portion. Now we're actually to the point where we need to do the oral interviews.
Mr. Mayor?
You done, Mr. Bozen?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Morrissey.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt Councilman Bozen or anybody, but the question I have is, if we are talking about oral interviews, why aren't we doing electronic interviewing? Because that is the way that we as a council operate. Why would it be any less effective for interviews for positions that I would see as essential to keep our vehicular fleet, our equipment up to snuff, so that our workers are operating on equipment that is safe? Why are we not using electronic interviewing?
So, Mr. Bennett, so have you done Zoom or Skype or phone, or so tell us where you're at. So you went through the resume application and you saw who you believe should move to the next process. Now you're doing phone interviews, correct?
We have not done that, no. We're actually at the point, typically what we try to do is we like to actually meet them in person, go through the interview process. Sometimes we even take them to where we do, or even a tour of the complex and that stuff as well too. So usually this is kind of done interview. So it's kind of hard to do that over the phone.
So when you have a interview and you sit a person directly in front of you, that's all verbal, right?
Yes, it is.
And then after you do the verbal, you take them out for a tour.
Yes. Sometimes that's what we end up doing. And then when we get done, we ended up doing the scoring process when we go to do that. And from there, it gets scored, and that eventually gets civil service to where we certify our list.
So am I hearing that you're not able to verbally ask people questions and go through an interview process either on phone or Zoom or something, or Skype?
We probably could do just some of the oral interview portions, and then we just have to do a follow-up on the other portion. But typically we like to do that in person.
Right. So right now,
these times are tough, but.
So we can talk offline tomorrow, but we at least need to be doing that phone interview or verbal interview so we can find out their skill set, because they don't do a technical part of the interview, do they? They don't actually go into the shop and change oil or do anything like that, right? Mr. Bennett?
No, I'm sorry. No, they don't do that. We could follow up with that.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Let me see. Mr. Morrissey, you done?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, yes, I am, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Is that Mr. Greider?
No, Mr. Feuss.
Mr. Feuss?
Is there a policy in place? I know I don't believe Mr. Dunn is on, but is there a policy in place that would prevent Randy from doing this that we're aware of right now?
None whatsoever.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions about this positions, or any other comment, oral presentations?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes, the last few weeks, we've been talking about different issues having to do with development agreements and deadlines and extensions. And as before, to me, this is troubling. And I know it sounds, in this time, to be requesting a part-time secretary for city council. So I'm not doing that. But what I would like to see happen, and I think it's a necessity that it happens, is that every time that we have a city council approved development agreement or some type of agreement and understanding that has timelines and has deadlines associated with it, that there is developed by whoever, whatever department, a tracking system so that the city council, all on city council, can be up on what is coming up for a deadline on different projects. And the second part of that, what I am requesting is that there be a minimum of a 6-month presentation to the council on projects and on development agreements, so that we as a council that have voted on these are made fully aware of the progress that has been made or lack of progress that has been made. And the third part of this is, are we going to need, and maybe the city council needs to draft either a resolution or ordinance language to the effect of both of those, Mr. Mayor.
So let me see. So you said one, to find out what development agreements that the city council, and you're wondering if there is a tracking system. Number two, I didn't quite understand number two. It's minimum of 6 months on project development agreements made fully aware. So we do economic development updates where we highlight quarterly what's taking place, what projects, pictures, and we do all of those things, and those are placed on the website. No, how would you know when a development agreement needs to be extended?
We actually have a Excel spreadsheet of all the development agreements that are approved with the dates in them and all that that we can check regularly, so we can share that with the council on a regular updates if that will work.
So Mr. Morrissey, do you still have the economic development update meetings and were those attended?
We have been attempting to have those with the new circumstances that we are under. I want to say the last set that we had was probably a little bit more than 6 months ago.
Mr.
Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, just a further explanation, the first part of that is exemplified by what happened last week with Paradise Estates, where there was an extension that was granted last year to this year, and then it comes up and for another extension. But within that, there are other parts that are included in what is requested to be done by, as an example, May 11th of 2020, that I believe the council should be aware of, and there be a tracking system that does that. There have been other agreements that have been brought up for extension or change of that we as a council have voted on, but then we don't have any system in place for us to track that. Yes, Noel might have it, but we don't have it, nor are we given it. And we should have that at our disposal with this high-tech generation that we're living in, to click on a specific site that we can go to that will give us information on a weekly basis about what is due as far as development agreements or understandings or anything like that that has deadlines that we as a city council have approved. The legislative body has approved, and it met your muster. It wasn't vetoed by you, so it went through and is part of your agenda. So that's what I'm looking at with number one. Number two is not a presentation from Noel. I believe that we need to have a presentation from the developer. I would like to see their face telling us what they had done and have Noel be part of that, because there's where the development agreement was struck and passed by the council between the developer or the developer's attorneys and the city of Waterloo through Noel and whoever else in planning department and our attorneys. That's what that second part of that is, Mr. Mayor. And the third part just has to do, is this something that we're going to have to, as a council, decide that we need to pass a resolution or write ordinance language to see if it would meet the muster and pass city council? Those are the 3 points of that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I would probably, what we don't want to do is come off as anti-development and we want to see projects completed. And we probably have one out of every 30 developments that may have to come back for you for an extension. And very few out of the total amount of development deals don't actually happen. But I mean, we can definitely communicate, but before we pass a resolution, I would probably want to sit down and think of a process, or is there something internally that can be done better to fulfill your wishes, keep you more in the know. But putting every developer in here that has to come back from out of town or do those things could be looked at as possibly not even wanting to do it. So if we can strike some type of balance in that conversation to get you what you need to have so that you're informed. Also, if I don't know, Kelly, if there's a link within our Novus system or the system that council has for them to be able to look at it, but also not giving away every secret we have to competing communities. So I don't know. We'll have to talk about it. But before we put a resolution up, I don't know. I just want to figure out how we can accommodate your needs. So we can definitely continue talking about it. Mr. Morrissey?
No, I understood what you said.
Yeah, and I see where you're coming from too, because it can be a lot. And then you have a situation that pops up like what just happened, and where we made progress, that progress can take a step backwards by not doing what we were supposed to do. Doing it in a way that was communicating to the citizens. So is there anyone else? Mrs. Juon? Are you there? Are you awake, Ms. Juon?
Yeah, I just muted it. I'm sorry. Motion to close oral presentations, receive comments, and place on file.
Second.
The motion has been made with second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oral presentations closed.
Motion to approve the consent agenda with the addition of 1A1, the dollar amount of $3,599,450.40 to receive the agenda, apply and place on file. Approve and place on file.
All right, that motion has been made with the second. Questions, council? Clerk?
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes on all of it except for number 1A, the Risque Gentlemen's Club. I vote no on that.
Mr. Feuss?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Juon?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We have 2 board appointments. Is there anyone in the audience? We have Laura Stamler from joining our Cultural and Arts Commission, new appointment, and Jennifer Bates also on the Cultural and Arts Commission as new opponent. So we want to thank them for their service if they're watching, and appreciate it. Could someone take number 2, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Greider.
I would like to make a motion to receive and file proof of publication of notice of public hearing, and that's for an application for state revolving fund loan for Titus Lift Station, contract number 975, contents of environmental information and project plan.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is now open. Is there anyone on the phone that may want to speak to this particular item, or in the audience? Going a second time?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to close hearing.
Second.
The motion has been made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I'd like motion authorizing environmental impact document.
Second.
That motion has been made with the second. Council? Madam Clerk?
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Feuss?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Bro, look at that look on his face.
It looks like a yes.
It looks pretty yes-like.
You couldn't believe it.
He's almost smiling. We'll come back to him. Mrs. Juon?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Greider, are you back?
Give him 1 second.
There.
Can he, well, he wants to be here for the reading. Oh, here it is.
There he is.
Gee.
All right. Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Could someone take 3 and 4, please?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Mayor.
I didn't know who that was.
was Margaret.
Mayor.
Ms. Klein.
Resolution number 3 is authorizing the city clerk to certify against certain parcels for unpaid lawn and weed mowing and property cleanups. Number 4 is a resolution approving a request by AutoZone, Inc. for the final plat of Kimball Addition, a 2-lot commercial subdivision located south of 3115 Kimball Avenue.
Second.
All right, that motion has been made with the second. Any comments about these items?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Morrissey.
Well, with item number 3, I talked to City Attorney Peterson today, and I mean, we've got close to $14,000 And if people had looked through that, they would have been seeing the different property owners included many absentee landlords to this property. But there are a number of questions that I think could come up as far as how this money, once it's sent over to Blackhawk County, how the city recoups that money. And I don't know if Michelle would be able to answer that or not. But also, we do this, I believe, on a yearly basis, if not, I don't think sooner. But when we do that, are we aware of the repeat violators of this, including absentee landlords? And if we have somebody that is a habitual violator, how is that dealt with? Mr. Mayor.
That's a tremendous question. Mr. Peterson or Michelle, either one of you know?
This is Michelle Wiedner, Chief Financial Officer. I can address how we get paid. The whole purpose of this process is we're certifying it to the tax bill of that particular parcel. So the property owner receives it on their tax bill and hopefully pays it with their next taxes. If they don't pay them, they could eventually go to tax sale, but a lot of times the county will write off those fees if that process happens. Maybe Mr. Peterson can talk about the repeat offenders. I don't have information about that.
Mr. Mayor, before, if I could just interject.
Yes, sir.
Mayor, when Michelle said that the county may write off, does that mean they write off that amount that the city has billed and then the city gets zero?
Potentially, yes.
I didn't hear.
Michelle Wiedner, CFO. Yes, if the county decides to do that, that means we get zero.
Do you know how often that happens, though, Chief Financial Officer Wiedner?
I do not. It would depend on how many properties get to tax sale. We just don't get a lot of information about that.
And that just begs the question, how do we change that? So we get more information and so this is actually followed through and not just dismissed by a different governmental entity that wasn't the recipient of the violation.
I would assume, I mean, you could attempt to talk to the county, but I think all those rules are set out probably in state code.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're muted, Mayor.
Yeah, he's talking with his hands a lot.
And Mr. Morrissey, would you like Mr. Peterson to kind of dive further into this topic for repeat offenders, how that's done?
Only for this one.
Well, if it'd be okay, Mr. Mayor, if I could just have I can maybe talk to City Attorney Peterson more about this and maybe make it a discussion with the dilapidated housing, because code enforcement comes over that too, Mr. Mayor. So I don't want to spend any more time on it, but thank you.
Yeah, and I actually like the idea too, because you got some folks that may not, and then you have some folks that are continuously in that cycle. So good conversation. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Morrissey?
Yes.
Mrs. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Feuss?
Yes.
Mr. Greider?
Yes.
Mrs. Juon?
Yes.
Mr. Bozen? Mr. Bozen?
Yes.
Mr. Amos?
Yes.
Anyone want to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second. That motion is made with the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.